Hello, everyone. My name's Sharzad Kiadeh. Welcome to another episode of Not My Circle, a conversation series where I get to talk to people that are not in my normal circle. I am so excited about today's conversation. I'm talking to a hunter for the first time in my life. I don't think I've ever spoken to a hunter. Definitely never spoken to a hunter about hunting. So this is a really, really good one. If you guys are enjoying this conversation series, which of course I hope you are, please subscribe on Apple Podcasts or YouTube or wherever you're watching it. Leave a rating or a review. That would be great. It really helps the podcast do well. And that way, hey, I can keep going and keep talking to more people that are interesting and different. Anyways, enjoy Evan. Woo. Evan. That was actually the name of my very first crush when I was 10. So I have a special fondness to that name.
All right. Make me blush. If I blush, I would start blushing right now.
Evan, what'd you have for breakfast?
Nothing.
Nothing? Okay, are you intermittent fasting? What's the deal?
I try, so I have a bunch of health issues, and my nausea is usually really bad until about 3 p.m. And so then I usually eat then, and it just so happens that that's also intermittent fasting. So it kind of works out. I've been able to cut some weight while doing that. So yeah, I've had nothing for breakfast or lunch. And I'll probably eat this afternoon or evening.
Okay. Well, I'm sorry you wake up with nausea. That's a bummer.
It's all right.
So you're a hunter and a conservationist.
Yes.
What does this mean? This is a world I truly know nothing about. And I just want to say, I don't think I've ever spoken to a hunter before. Certainly never spoken to anybody who hunts about hunting.
Yeah.
And this is, this is a world I know nothing about. So I'm very happy that you're going to explain your world to me. What do you do? What's a conservationist?
So a conservationist, and this is what I do professionally, a conservationist is somebody that looks at our natural resources and find out how do we maintain those and keep those for future generations. So the basis of that is, what do we have today? How do we protect it and make sure that we have enough or more of it for the future for our kids and grandkids? That's really what the basis is. And so there are so many sides of conservation as far as, are you talking about trees? Are you talking about plants? Are you talking about the oceans? Are you talking about wildlife on the land? So there are so many different variations of conservation. And it just so happens that I'm a conservationist and a hunter, which hopefully the deeper you dive into this, the more you're going to see that is oftentimes very much the same. And I think that's a big misconception. And I look forward to kind of talking to you about that as well.
I would love to. Yeah. So I guess I like I said, I really know nothing about this world. First of all, who pays you to do this? Is this a government thing?
So hunting is on the side. That's I'm not paid directly from somebody to hunt. I didn't start it that way. I do have sponsors now, different brands and different reps that, have merchandise and the sky's the limit as far as, what gear do you need to go to the field, through all 4 seasons to hunt different species. So that's on that side, but that's been, kind of more recent, the last probably 5 years, to having different sponsors. As far as what I do professionally, I'm actually a federal employee. And do you remember the Dust Bowl, that you learned about in school? We had the Dust Bowl out west. So a big part of that was we were trying to grow crops out west, and the farmers kept plowing up the ground. So tilling, if you will, and ripping the ground up and making it soft. And that way they thought it was going to be better to plant in, and they thought that's what you had to do. That's how you keep weeds off. That's how you keep, the competition off. That's how you make good crops. We found out that after doing that over and over and over again, you break down the soil so much that there's no structure and it turns into powder. So if you've ever walked on a sidewalk next to a construction site and you kind of see that sediment runoff, that's what was happening. And then all of a sudden we had the Great Depression that went with it, and we lost all of our soil. We had these giant 10, 15, 20 foot deep cuts all through these crop fields. The soils literally were dead. They didn't produce anymore. And so what I do now is conservation for soil, water, wildlife. We work with farmers and landowners that have these grounds, and we try to help them understand how to do conservation practices, how to improve our water quality, our soil quality, our environmental habitat. So there's a lot of things that you do in agriculture that you can do better as far as conservation and making sure that we need to provide food for the world, but we also need to make sure we're providing clean water to the world. And we have to do all those things while competing against weeds and competing against pests and insects that want to kill the plants. There's so many things we have to do. And I'm very interested in some of this. I started digging in a little bit on your diet because the belief system behind part of that, and whether you, is it pescatarian?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So whether you do that because of the scientific side behind it or the ethical, or that's just, your heritage and your lineage, and that's why you do it. But a big part of that was actually because of the carbon footprint with cattle. And so as the more that I start reading into that, I'm like, this is unbelievable. Because of what I do, I work with cattle farmers all the time. And a lot of the times when you have somebody that, and I don't want to generalize, but a lot of the times, the new world vegetarians, I'm a vegetarian because it's cool, is kind of the thing. Yours does not fall into that. The carbon footprint, to try to reduce the carbon footprint that we are all producing, and talking about the animals taking up more grass than they need, and then the crop fields producing the crop, the corn and everything we need to feed the cattle on, and all of the carbon that takes to do just to produce 1 pound of meat. I thought that was very interesting. And how sustainable the ocean is, when you're looking at seafood and different things. And that was just very neat. So I'm a science guy, and I'm not one that just kind of goes with the times. I like to know what I'm doing and why we're doing that. And so when I started looking into kind of your diet and why you live that way, and, just the same as me, as I'm doing something different than you are, I already feel like I'm getting a twofold here. I'm getting interviewed, but I'm really interested to hear about your diet as well, because of that sustainability. That's a big part of what we're doing.
I wouldn't consider myself a new wave vegetarian because I was raised vegetarian. So I was vegetarian before people knew what vegetarian was.
Yeah.
My mom read Diet for a Small Planet, Diet for a New America. So my mom was just really into cooking plant-based, plant-forward food growing up for us. So we grew up that way. So this might be painful for your ears to hear, but I've never had steak in my life.
Yeah, that is rough.
I've never had lamb or pork. I did dabble with chicken a bit here and there, but it's just how I like to eat. And I've been totally plant-based before. That didn't work as well for me and my lifestyle, but I do like fish, and I do like playing with vegetables. And that's truly the most honest answer. It's how I grew up, how I loved it. And, I think the meat that most people are eating is pretty, from what I've researched and watched, is pretty bad. It's infested with hormones, and the animals are tortured, and it doesn't seem like a great source of protein. I'm curious to hear about the kind of meat that you eat, because I feel like it's probably the healthiest kind of meat that you can get. And if you want to eat meat, eating it the way you eat it is, in my opinion, I have a lot of respect for that. I have respect for anybody that really understands where their food comes from. I think that's a really cool thing. And I think most people are pretty out of touch and not connected at all with how they get their food. I have a lot of respect for people that grow their own vegetables. I think that's really cool. I wish I knew more about it. But in terms of, my diet, it's really how I how I grew up, and it's a continuation of how my mom cooked for us. So I was never like jumping on a fad to be cool. It's genuinely like we were cool way before it was cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's things. But you know, I also I genuinely don't judge people for eating meat. If I did, I wouldn't probably have that many friends.
Yeah.
And, you know, who am I to judge how somebody eats and how they feed their family? I would never put my opinions onto somebody else. That's a personal thing. You know, I hope people have access to healthy food. That's the goal for the world. And for me, of course, I want people to eat food that isn't infested with hormones. And I, of course, I hate the videos that I've seen about the way animals are tortured. You know, I think that's really wrong. But I think what you do is totally different than that. I think those are two separate ways to consume meat. And I'm, you know, so how do you hunt all your own meat?
Yeah, your segue has been perfect. So you touched on so many different things of why it is what I do. And I'm so glad the depth of you talk about your family and you cook this way because that's how you were raised. You know, when you guys all get together, you know, you have all the food and it's a big thing, you know, it's a social family, you know, you're proud of that. And I was checking your page and noticed how much you do cook. And you like to be involved with where does your food come from? What am I feeding my family? What nutrients am I getting? And was it not taken from some place where an animal suffered? And so with that, our hunting it's so instilled in us. And when I say hunting, it's not walking to the woods and shooting something. That is the smallest piece of hunting that there is. You know, my sons are 4 and 7 and they know more about conservation. I know your mom, boy mom posts are cracking me up because it's the same thing my wife's doing. And just that life, you know, these wild little boys, but they're being raised to understand where does our food come from? You know, how do we get healthy food? And so the way that I think about this is almost every piece of meat that we eat in our home is from the land. It is wild game, as much as we possibly can. You know, you have game limits, you know, you can only take so many animals. You can only, you know, you have certain seasons where the animal's in or not in. And so what I look at is I think, okay, and I do support beef, but I do for a lot of different reasons than probably what you can see around you. So I live in Southern Indiana, and we actually are one of the top beef production states in the U.S. And actually my county that I live in, the conservation work I do, we're one of the top cattle producing counties in the country. But we're not right up next to a slaughterhouse, you know, and our meat processing plants around here, we don't call them plants. They're these mom and pop, you know, or Amish owned meat lockers where, you know, you take an animal that's been farm raised, that has had all this land, to me, it's almost the perfect life. I mean, they get treated very well. These aren't animals that are stuffed in. Also, these are free range. I say free. I mean, you know, they're out on the pasture. And so when they get taken in, I mean, they're fed, you know, corn. They're kind of lured in. They're kind of taken care of. And yeah, there's another side of that, the bad side that's tough about it. But here, the way that we process animals is so much different, and it's just done with so much respect because these farmers are hands-on every single day raising that cow from a calf all the way up. And so there's a different hands-on deal here. It's small town. So, okay. When you raise in this case, you said you raise a calf from the time it's a baby. Is there any shred of guilt when you kill it, when you've known it for essentially its whole entire life? Like, and I mean, I didn't grow up with animals either. I haven't really been around animals. I don't eat them and I haven't really been around them. So again, this world is foreign to me. But so I don't totally understand that connection with an animal because I've never personally had it since I've never even had a dog. Yeah.
But I know that people are connected to animals, obviously.
Yes.
When you are connected to an animal, as I imagine all these people are connected, and then you kill it and eat it, I mean, what's going on there? What kind of, genuinely, what does that feel like?
Yeah. One big thing, and we're kind of talking about agriculture versus hunting, and we'll kind of get into that, but the lifestyle is, we care about what we're eating. We care about that animal more than people can understand, because we are connected to what we're eating. We knew what we were eating. And there is not a single farmer, hunter, person out there that can go and take an animal and not feel it. You want to watch some 80-year-old old white guy, out on his farm cry. Well, watch the day that the calves or the cattle get sent off. I mean, that you feel that. And at the same time, you give that animal the best life that it can get by being out on your beautiful pastures and just enjoying the life. It has literally one bad day that it doesn't know is going to be a bad day. And I don't mean to push that down, but the way that most of the animals actually get slaughtered, and not the way that you see on, the extreme pages, they come in and I'll just walk you through it. I mean, they'll take the cattle and they'll walk them right through into the processing plant. And they have these little air guns, and it's like this pneumatic gun, and it's boom, and that animal is done. It's that fast. One of the biggest things between myself being a hunter, being a conservationist, is I never want the animal to suffer. Never. And that is the same with these farmers around me. They care about these animals more than you could ever understand. I mean, it is a lifestyle. And the reason I was so happy about the way you transitioned is you're talking about food as a family connection. And this is my heritage. This is the way the mom cooks. So now this is the way I cook, and it makes me feel good. We are raised around hunting, and we teach our kids, or, my uncle taught me, and it's a family thing. When we get together and we can hunt and we can eat together the wild game that we took, there's a lot of pride in that. And the biggest thing about taking an animal is that when you hunt, that animal is wild. That animal the animal's had a better life than I've had. It is out there. It is just, every day it gets to do what it wants to do, gets to eat, gets to drink, gets to lay down in the sun. And when I teach my kids, and when I was taught, and the way that I hunt is I don't want that animal to ever suffer. So as I take the animal and I hunt the animal, I want that animal to die as fast and as ethically quick as possible. I don't want it to suffer.
Okay, so do you only hunt for food for your family, or do you hunt for, so you're, because I think that there's a huge distinction there, right?
Yes.
Like, I see the pictures of people on Instagram that go viral where they're holding up like an elephant, and honestly, it makes me sick to my stomach. It makes me angry. It makes me livid. Because in my world, in my perspective, they're just killing it to show off and stuff it and hang it on their wall. Mm-hmm. That feels very awful. Hunting food that you're going to feed your family with, like I said, I have no issues with. I think that's a wonderful thing to do for your family, and a great place to get meat if you eat meat. So where do you fall? You always feed your family. Is that always fair?
The only caveat to any animal that I kill that I do not eat would be predators. So coyotes, things like that, which even in LA, you guys have issues with too many coyotes, and they come and take pets. And
you don't have to convince me. I live in the boot south of LA now, and every time I go on the Nextdoor app, it's like, coyote was in my yard. Coyote's going to come my dog. So
what we have done as humans is we've kind of taken away, there's very few wolves now, there's very few of these other predators. The top predator is us. And the more that we don't take care of a couple of those different species, they kind of run wild with their populations. And again, conservation, we're hunting for conservation. And so many people, the people that want to get pretty lippy and kind of fly off on Instagram, they don't understand how that's a concept. One coyote can take out like 15 different fawns, baby deer in the spring. That's what it's going to eat. Okay. So that deer was going to produce, 2 deer this year, and you continue with that pyramid of the population, you were really losing a lot of animals. I do a lot of quail habitat restoration. So bobwhite quail, it's a bird that has to have the right kind of habitat, and it's got to have the right kind of predator control, because coyotes and bobcats will just come up and destroy them.
But isn't that aren't we just kind of interfering with natural selection then?
Okay,
as
perfect.
Humans?
Yep. So
You've had this question before.
No. Well, it's a part of conservation that's hard for people to understand until you really start looking at it. And so we have interfered with the circle of life.
Humans.
Back before, there were predators and the populations would keep each other in check. Right. Now we have habitat. You have a beautiful home in LA that has landscape flowers all over the place. Well, now all of a sudden our deer populations are going nuts, and there's deer in the neighborhoods. And now all of a sudden there's so many deer that the deer are they're malnutrition, malnourished, they can't eat, they're starting to cause issues with disease, car accidents with people. We're starting to have all these things because of the different human interactions. Now we, at the same time, we have slowed down some of the predator hunting because of the animals that we no longer have, or the habitat loss. And so there is nothing here that's taking out coyotes. There's nothing there's no predator above coyotes except for us. So in order for me to promote a healthy deer population and a healthy bobwhite quail population and all these other native species that we do conservation work for, you have to balance the population. Okay. Now, I'm not eliminating coyotes. I am not trying to get rid of every coyote I see. I don't hate coyotes. They're gorgeous. They're just beautiful animals. And I get to see wildlife in ways that people don't, because I'm sitting in a tree for hours upon hours a day, all through the fall, all through the spring. I spend time there covered up in camo to where the animals don't know I'm there. And from sun up to sundown, when you walk through on a trail, going on a nature trail, you scare everything that's out there. You get to see some wildlife if you're lucky, but I get to see it, how it is and how it interacts and how it lives. And that really changes the way that you view wildlife and animals. I guarantee, if you could see inside my heart, I care so much more about these animals than other people do. Even somebody that protests hunting or is a vegetarian because they don't believe in the what we do to animals. I love that animal more than you do. I promise. That it means the world to me to be able to help sustain the populations. And I'm helping these other populations by helping to control another population.
I appreciate that you explain that in a nice, calm, easy to understand way. So thank you. So how often do you hunt? What's a day like when you're out hunting? You said you were in the trees for hours dressed in camo. Walk me through the day. You wake up and you're like, I'm going to hunt. We need meat in the freezer. Or what is that look like?
Yeah. So we have all these different seasons. So deer season is my big, there's nothing better for me than to hunt deer. And that doesn't mean killing deer either. I sit in the tree way more than I actually harvest a deer, because I'd love to be out there. That's where I meditate. That's where I think. That's where I relax. That's where I take my deep breaths. And just like if you went up to the mountain and you just go for a hike and just sit up there, you take that fresh breath. So usually deer season comes in October. So, and then it comes out the beginning of January for us. So pretty well every day that I'm not working, and every evening I'm not working, and then the weekends I am in a tree. And what we do is and you can hunt all kinds of different ways, but get off work.
I love that you said that. Every weekend and every weeknight I am in a tree. I've never heard anybody say that before. And I guarantee my sister, she's on mute, but I guarantee she's not going to appreciate it. But I just wanted to take a moment, because that's a really sweet, cute thing that you said, that you're just in a tree. You're not at a bar. You're not getting wasted. You're hanging out in a tree.
No. Yeah. I'm not going out to be a murderer. I'm not going out to hate animals. I'm not doing those things. I'm out there because I will watch that deer a mom and a fawn, the baby deer, and I'll sit there and watch it all day long. We take so many pictures of deer. We literally thousands upon thousands of wildlife pictures versus, the deer that I take. I might take a couple deer a year to feed our family. And then I seem to be taking more deer as the years pass. My uncle is the one that taught me to hunt. When I was 12, he's the one that got me into hunting. Our family was very outdoorsy. We didn't have any money. So when we went on vacations, we camped. We took the tent and we drove and we camped. That was vacation for us. And then we would fish, we'd hike. That was what we did. And I grew up in the country, we had some land, and we took care of the neighbors. We took care of the old ladies that were next door that were widowed. It's a community kind of thing. And it's just that deep rooted care for people and care for the land and care for wildlife and care for the outdoors. And so my uncle got me into hunting when I was 12, and he takes me into this next group of it. And I went through hunter's education, and I did all these trainings that you're supposed to do before you hunt. And the whole time I'm doing it, I kept telling him, I said, well, that's fine. You can teach me all you want, but I'm not going to shoot an animal. There's no way I can do that. I can't pull the trigger. There's just no way. And I will tell you that the day that I take an animal and I don't feel it, I don't feel inside that I just did that, I'll stop. The day that I no longer am sensitive to taking that animal's life, I believe honestly that these animals are here for us to consume, and it's not even just the consuming part. I mean, I love wildlife. This is what we do. We just sit out and watch animals so much. But so from October on, all the days I work, I'm working, and then I get off work and I run to the tree stand. I'll be 20 foot up in a ladder that's got a nice seat up at the top of it. And that's how we look over. That way you can look up over things and see high. Deer are also very sensitive to smell. So you need to be as high as you can so that they can't smell you. And there are, if you think a woman has skincare products, let me tell you about being a hunter. I have to wash my clothes in scent-free stuff. I have to take a shower in scent-free soap. My beard gets all ruffly because I don't have any oil in it. So I have to get some non-scented beard oil. It's outrageous. Then I have to paint my face with paint. I mean, I might as well just be a makeup artist at this point. So, so we're out there doing all these different things. And so in the evenings, I'm out there, and deer are more active in the mornings and in the evenings. And then on the weekends before sunrise, we are in the tree, and waiting for sunrise to hit, and we stay until it gets dark, and then we come back out. And then
so the days when you do get a deer, when you shoot a deer, what do you do with it after? Like you I don't know, chop it up there? I don't even know if that's the right word. Or do you? No, you're fine. What do you do with the meat? Yeah. So after we take the deer, when you're in the field, this is another big part of giving back. And this is what I feel like the nature side of it. So you field dress the deer, which is gutting the deer. Okay. You don't want the guts to touch the meat. You don't want the innards to come into contact. You don't want those, any kind of contamination of the meat. I'm trying to do this as cleanly as I can. So you open up the stomach and everything, and you take everything out, so that what you're left with is kind of what you see in a meat locker picture, where it's just the muscles hanging up. So what we do is we take all that out, and then we leave that for the rest of the wildlife. Mm. So we have trail cameras. They're motion cameras you put up on a tree. And so as soon as a deer walks by, you get pictures of it. And I have some of the most incredible pictures of bald eagles coming down and eating off of the animal pile. Raccoons, squirrels, coyotes, again, who we're, trying to limit, but we're feeding them just as fine. All the birds, all these different animals that are depending on animals dying, they're consumers, and that's what they need. So we leave that out in the field, out in the woods, wherever we can, so that the animals can have that back. And if the animals don't eat it, it'll decompose back into the soil, and we're again returning back to the soil microbes. That's how far of a picture this is for me. And then we take the deer home, or you take it to a processor, kind of up to you and how you were raised. I was raised, we do our own meat.
I took that animal. That was a sacrifice that I was given. I took that animal. I'm the one that harvested it. I owe it to that animal to process it. I don't just go drop it off at the store, that's going to process it for me. And that mindset's a little bit different than some other people. But I want my hands on that meat. I need to feel where my food came from. I'm being connected to my food. And I know that animal hasn't been eating, all these different things that we don't want our food to eat. And so, I'm taking as organic and as natural and as healthy of meat as I can possibly get. We're very selective with the deer that we do take because we want our herds to grow or sustain those populations depending on where they are. And we want to make sure that we're taking the right deer out of that herd. If we're going to have a really old deer that's starting to have some issues, I actually right now have a deer on camera that is going to be dead shortly. I have videos of it. I have pictures of it. It's naturally dying. And I have all these pictures on camera and all these videos. And it's, as of right now, I just checked cameras the other day and pulled the card, and that deer is still alive. And it's getting smaller and it's getting skinnier. I can see spots on its back where a bobcat has actually jumped on it. You think about nature and how unfriendly nature is versus somebody that's going to take an animal and kill it that fast that never even knew I was there, and it's dead, and now it's going to be processed and appreciated, and it's going to feed my family. There's a big difference in, a hunter being evil and a hunter hating wildlife. And it's like, I'm taking that animal out faster than what nature would do.
Right. Right.
So
I have a quick question. So you seem like you're very one with the earth and you really respect the planet, which I love.
Yes.
But I noticed that you're drinking out of a plastic water bottle. Could you explain?
Yeah, I can. So my cup that I have been drinking out of all day has coffee remnants in it still. And I was in a hurry to get back here. So I'm back in my conference room instead of sitting in my office. And so I ran back here, and I know that I will be very parched. And so I grabbed what I could, which is, I'm gonna start doing this now. I'm gonna recycle this, and I believe this specific bottle's probably already been recycled like 20 times because I can barely hold it without it crinkling. So I already know it's a recycled plastic bottle. I don't drink out of those new plastic bottles. So I'm very sorry about that.
Curious. I'm sure you've seen on Instagram in the world, there's a huge vegan movement. There's a lot of people talking about plant-based lifestyles. What do you think about that?
So I think if you're doing it for the right reasons or your own reasons, I think that's fine. I love meat. I love seafood. I love meat. I actually think that I'm getting a healthier meat product than most people probably can buy vegetables at the store, if that makes sense. Because I do work with farmers and I know what land applications are made to produce those vegetables and all those different things. I think if you want to, honestly, eat what you want to eat. I have no issue with that. What I have an issue with is when people call each other out for doing what they believe in that is not hurting someone else. I have a lot of health issues that have actually made being outdoors more and more difficult. And the outdoors have just continued to be my sanctuary. I hunt for way more reasons than because I like to eat a hamburger. That's such a small piece of it. I think if you have a health issue where you're going to see a benefit in going to completely plant-based, I think that's great if you can find a benefit from that. I think that there are people that can't stomach the thought of consuming meat or an animal product. I appreciate that if that's how you feel about it. I mean, that's, to me, I wish everybody could go through the process of processing your own meat. We've raised chickens at our home. We raised them at our home, and then I had to process them. That's a very difficult thing to do. And I think that's why we get so fired up. And I say we as hunters or meat eaters that are respectful of the land, You have no idea how hard it is to butcher your own animals, butcher your own chickens. It's not fun. It's not exciting. It's not a happy experience. But when it comes down to it, I know that that animal lived a really good life. I know that I took great care of it. I know that it never was right on top of another animal. It wasn't covered in manure. It wasn't, drinking dirty water. It was taken care of. It was happy. We hold our chickens. I mean, we are one with our farm, and our property as far as that goes. And it's like the worst day of the season when I have to process our birds, but I'm not going to the store to buy something that has hormones or steroids or something that they had to have, which there's a lot of misinformation, I will say, about that. A lot of animals, there are complete restrictions that you're not supposed to give that animal hormones. You're not supposed to give that animal antibiotics and then send it off. There's a lot of different rules and regulations. Now, I'm not going to say that that's what's being followed and that's the perfect world, is that, you're not consuming something that you shouldn't be, as far as that goes.
I want to ask real quick. I just want to circle back. What do you think of people that kill like elephants and tigers for sport and show it off on Instagram? Because we touched on that a little bit, but what do you think of that? Because you cross paths with them in your world.
So I will tell you that I spend a lot of time watching hunting shows, and that's what we do on Saturday mornings if we're not in the woods and whatnot. And I personally don't watch. I don't watch those shows. And I have a lot of reasons. What I will say about it is that most of the time, those are very wealthy people that are going out and hunting. And they do want that giant elephant head on their wall. But usually it's through a tribe. That's usually how they're doing it. And all of that meat goes to the tribes. So what you don't see, and I'll try to find you some of these posts because it is really eye-opening what, the second or third or fourth picture is of the story. And it's the entire village coming in, the tribes, the villages coming in and helping process that animal. And that's their meat. So when you do those, yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Nothing goes to waste. And so while I have no interest whatsoever on going and hunting a zebra, you pay the tribe, whoever owns that territory, big bucks, like 50 grand big bucks to go in there and hunt that animal. That money goes in there and it's helping to actually reduce poaching. That's been a huge part. That's actually where a lot of the conservation money comes from, is hunters by doing this. And so, and then areas in Africa and different areas that are suffering with poaching, they're realizing, hey, we can make more money if we actually take care of these herds and these wildlife animals. And when I see all of the meat, because you can't fly that meat back, that meat cannot leave there. So when you see all of that meat going to, it's like the kids you see on the commercials that make you sick, that you're so upset about, that they have no food, they have no shoes, they have no shirt. Right. Those are the people that meat is going towards. Okay. It is very hard because for me, I think I have no interest in doing that. As far as going to Africa and hunting a certain animal, that's just not my. Now, if it was a complete wild animal and I got to experience that, that might be a different story. But I just personally have no interest in it. But I do know through all of these conservation organizations, they will actually show you, here's the picture of the entire tribe coming in and cutting up this animal. They're all processing it. And you see a line of people taking meat back. Then it makes you think about it.
You definitely don't see that. I've never,
exactly.
I've never heard that. I didn't know. It does look like a bunch of, rich white men that are flying there to show off. And it feels like just an ego thing to go, from my perspective, go kill some beautiful creature that was having a nice day until some white dude came along, fancy gun, and was like, watch me, and here's my ego, and I'm going to post it, and I'm going to raise hell. And, so I see why those people get hate, because if they would show a little bit more of the story, maybe it would be less, but it seems like he ever really does. Again, from my perspective.
And I agree with most of your perspective for sure, as far as that goes. I mean, and it's very shallow what you do see. And I think, like, we had a couple of years ago, we had the dentist that killed that lion.
I know.
That just blew up the internet. And what they didn't talk about is how much money he had to pay those groups and how much conservation that went to. And then they did eat the animal. I think the hard thing is that in the US, we sit here and we look at these animals that are in the zoos, and we think about them being out in these native habitats and everything in Africa and all these different beautiful places. And we think about those animals being over there. And then when we think about hunting or killing one of them, it pulls at you a little bit different because you don't see that animal every day. So like how I see deer every single day driving around, I know how much we have a great population of deer here. Or you see a cow as you drive by, or different things like that. It doesn't bother you as much because you are more tuned to it, And so as you're so desensitized to things around here, and then all of a sudden you see an elephant that we don't have this beautiful creature here, but somebody goes and hunts it over there, it bothers you more because we don't see them.
Totally.
Yeah.
So you obviously have guns.
Mm-hmm.
Were you easily able to get guns? Do you feel like everybody should be allowed to have guns if they want? Do you think gun laws should be more strict? I'm just curious because I imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, you have a big collection of guns.
Yeah.
About the current ease in which people get guns.
Yeah. This is a tough one.
And I'm asking because I really never get to talk to people with a ton of guns. Now, I certainly know there are tons of responsible gun owners.
Yeah.
I know many, many, many people who are very responsible gun owners. I'm, as you could probably guess, not a gun person myself, not into them at all, don't like them, but I understand of course, the gun for what you do, or I imagine you have guns for what you do. What do you think about the laws?
So, man, there are just so many variables on this. I am a gun supporter. However, I am not a free gun for everybody supporter. I had to go through a background check to buy my guns. I had to submit, my full reports, pay all the money to get my gun permits, fingerprints. I've gone through all the legal channels to do so. I support that. I think that you should have to go through some kind of channel. I think that you should make sure that you're not a dangerous person. I think that we should make sure that we don't have people with these extreme mental health issues continuing to get guns. I think a big part of the difference, and this is across the country and across so many other things, is that when you live in LA and you call 911, how fast do they get there? 2, 3, 4 minutes.
Yeah.
My house caught fire, and 28 minutes after I called 911, the first person arrived.
Yeah.
So if you think about, and actually I had an incident where we had some issues with a neighbor that I called 911 because we actually thought there was a very dangerous thing happening. And it was like 38 minutes for the cops to get to my house. So you being a boy mom and, your husband and you guys together, if you were ever in an issue, a situation where things were dangerous and somebody was trying to break into your home, somebody was trying to break into your car, and you called 911 and they were going to be 30 minutes away, but that guy is about to come into your house and murder your family.
Right.
That's where my gun rights are different in the way that I view this versus take guns away from everybody or give everybody a gun. I think that if you're going to have a gun, you need to be educated. I think you need to have some kind of training. I'm prior military, and then and I taught the firearm classes. I've taught firearm classes since I got out of the military. I teach, again, I said this at the beginning, but I have taught so many females how to hunt and how to shoot. The first time they ever shoot, I've taught them how to do this. And it's always amazing. The biggest fear about guns, or the biggest misunderstanding, is how to handle a gun, and that all guns are so dangerous. Guns are dangerous if they're in the hands of the wrong people, or if you don't know what you're doing and you hold a gun and you're a great guy. Doesn't matter. They're dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. I will say that my 4 and 7-year-old both can handle a gun better than most people that I know. This is actually going to be the first year that my 7-year-old hunts on his own. I'm taking him turkey hunting in a couple weeks. The firearms safety that these boys already know at 4 years old and 7 years old would just blow away an adult that doesn't know much about guns.
Yeah.
Because guns are not a mystery in my house. We don't, the kids get to see them. The kids get to safely handle them. They get to learn how to do it. They get to learn how to do it at a super young age. And what that does is it takes away all that mystery that, oh, I want to climb up there and see dad's gun. Well, we've seen dad's gun 100 times this year. It's no big deal. Now I'm not saying that I keep them loaded and keep them where the kids can get them. But if I open up the safe to get in there, I want my kids right with me because they're in there, they're looking, they're asking me questions. What about that? Yeah, that was my uncle's. That was my uncle's gun, that he gave this to me when I was young, and it's something that, I don't know how to fix this because do I take your driver's license away because somebody else was a drunk driver?
No,
you didn't drive drunk.
It's an interesting debate. Yeah.
Yeah. You followed the laws. You did everything you were supposed to do, but because somebody broke the law, because they don't respect the law, they probably did not buy that gun legally.
Right.
The issue is I'm a good guy with a gun. I'm going to follow the laws.
Right.
The criminal who has intent to harm somebody else with a gun is not going to go to your store, fill out the paperwork, do the background check. If it's a no gun zone, they're not going to take their gun off.
Right.
And so it's like, what do we do? I honestly, and that's where I run into, issues, and I have hunting guns and different guns for hunting.
Right.
But we also have, and my wife, we all have our handgun permits. If I'm not doing something, or if I'm not at home, my wife knows how to shoot and how to take care of, a gun and how to handle a gun.
Yeah.
She started shooting a gun at 5 years old, with her dad.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that, we just know how to handle them. And when you're taught and you take care of it and you respect it, it's not this big dangerous thing. But then when you have idiots that keep breaking the law and keep shooting up places and everything else, it's like, what do we do? Because if you say, okay, no more guns, who's going to have guns and who's not going to have guns? It's going to be the bad guys are going to have the guns and the good guys won't have the guns. Even when I go to church, we have a church security team and we carry in church to make sure that we're protecting our flock. We're taking care of those people, and making sure that, there's so much violence in churches now. There's people walking into churches and shooting them up. So, we have a security team for church. If I go to the supermarket and I'm walking in there and I have my gun on me, and you are a mother with some kids that's walking next to me or in the store, and somebody comes into the store with malintent, I'm not just protecting myself. I'm there and I'm going to protect you as well. That's my duty. That's what I feel that I'm supposed to do.
You seem like a bit of a rare breed, though. Maybe again, that's maybe my perspective because of the lens in which I grew up. Right. Mm-hmm. I don't like to put myself in any box. I'm a mixed kid, but I definitely did grow up liberal Bay Area.
Yeah. Yeah.
My dad's an immigrant, so there are a couple stereotypes that I do sort of fall under. And one of them is that I don't get the gun obsession. For you explained it clearly. It makes sense. You hunt, you feed your family. And I absolutely respect that. But I also see the news where, my girlfriend lived right by the grocery store that was just shot up, recently. That's her grocery store. And she's traumatized because she was there the day before. And, that kind of thing boils my blood. It makes me insane. I know that guy didn't get his gun the right way. I feel like there needs to be a little bit more regulation, but part of me also doesn't know enough about it. And I certainly, nobody I know is hunting for food here. Nobody I know that has a gun is actually using it to feed their family. Have it. My grandpa, an interesting story, and I'll just share it really quick because I have a few more questions. But my grandpa grew up in the restaurant business. He was a restaurant owner. He had guns in his house. because we would walk the money at the end of the night to the safe.
Yep.
And my mom got the gun when she was being babysat. She was 9 and my uncle was like 6 or 7. And she knew where my grandpa's gun was, and she pulled it out on the babysitter because the babysitter wasn't changing the channel. And she said, change the channel. She pointed a gun. My mom at 9 years old pointed a gun, a loaded gun at a babysitter.
Yeah.
And you hear the story and you think, oh my God, that could have gone horribly wrong. Yeah. My mom was the sweetest person on the planet Earth, and she was just a little kid who didn't know how to use a gun. And think about those kinds of stories. And my grandpa needed a gun, and we might cut this part out because Shireen will probably say I'm rambling. But I think about things like that, and I think, well, there's a lot of stories where that something not similar, but some sort of story about where a gun went wrong. A gun.
Yes, and you're not rambling. You're telling the story of how something like that is a commonplace. Yeah. And somebody like me that's a gun owner and teaches my kids and teaches other people how to handle guns and how to be safe with them. My approach would be, why are we taking gun safety out of schools? Why are we not sharing more gun education? Mm-hmm. That is such a big part of it, is that where'd you learn how to drive? Well, did you go through driver's ed? Probably. Where did you learn how to write? Well, you went to school. They taught you how to write. All these things we're taught. And one of the things that seems to be, if you don't know about guns, then they're kind of a scary, dangerous thing.
For sure.
If you know about guns, then they're not a dangerous thing. And you don't want them in the hands of somebody that shouldn't have a gun. Right. And I think that's why there's such a polar split, but we're both really on the same. It's so hard because
you don't want
genuinely on the same side. I don't want a kid to get a hold of a gun and do anything. I don't want the bad guy to have a gun. I don't want schools to be shot up. I don't want any of that. I wish I was at the grocery store and I would have been there to be able to stop that guy. That's what I wish. I wish more good guys would carry guns. I honestly do. I wish people that felt the calling, that were responsible, would step up and carry more guns, because it is proven that where there are actually more guns and more guns known to criminals, there's less crime. So think about what is one of the most dangerous cities in the whole United States, and what are their gun laws? Chicago.
Yeah. Oh,
you are not allowed to have a gun in Chicago. So wait a minute, how can you have all these shootings in Chicago if the law says you can't have a gun?
Yeah. Oh, I know.
Because the good guys don't have guns.
Chicago. He's a total Chicago guy. I know we unfortunately, he has a lot of gun stories.
Yeah, exactly. It's everywhere. And it's all in the drugs and the illegal stuff. And that's where that all seems to continuously stir.
You made an interesting correlation, though, between, and this is something I've thought of many, many times, about driving a car, which I think are super dangerous. I've been in a ton of horrible car accidents, never while I was driving, and guns. And I've always thought, if we just treated gun ownership a little bit more similarly as we did driving a car, like you said, maybe we would have a few less hiccups. 6-month driver's permit, you get your license taken away or whatever. You got to pay fines. You've got to go back to driver's school. I got to be a certain age to handle one. I wish that it was a little bit more regulated, similar to a car, because a car is a big deal. And there's a ton.
And there's a lot.
I live in LA. I see them texting and driving on the 405 when they're going 75 miles an hour. That enrages me just as much.
And that's why hunting in the outdoors is so important to me. After 3 military surgeries from an issue, I then was T-boned in a car and have now had left shoulder surgery and 2 neck surgeries. And so the outdoors for me, that's why it's so important, and teaching people about that. But if you could get people to have more knowledge and education about guns, my favorite people to teach, I would love to teach you how to shoot a gun. Like,
I shot a gun once.
I don't know.
I will admit that.
Yeah.
In Montana.
I don't know what it is. It's like taking somebody that is afraid of a gun and especially a female who just doesn't, they haven't had that awareness. They haven't had an opportunity to learn,
right.
And teaching them. And all of a sudden, like, you just watch them light up and they're just like, wait a minute, like, I'm not scared of this anymore. Like, and I know how to handle it. And I know, I can protect myself now. And that just lights me up. It's just so humbling when you can see somebody gain their strength, and their confidence in something. So,
well, look, it's always interesting to learn, right? And I've always been a curious person. I've lived my whole life that way. Yeah. Typically don't say no to a lot of things, but I've had a really fun life so far because of that. Well, I want to ask you, we kind of touched on this too, but maybe if you could elaborate a little bit more what some common misconceptions are about you that you want to sort of dismantle.
One of the biggest ones, as far as people say that hunters hate animals and just want to kill. Okay. That is so far from the truth. Again, I actually dedicated my life to being a conservationist because of my upbringing with hunting and fishing and being outdoors and seeing how much I love the animals and love wildlife. That's what, I spent 6 years in college, and now I've been, in my career for quite a while doing this because I love animals so much. Some of the other things is, this always cracks me up, is that why do you need to hunt when you can just go to the grocery store and buy meat? Okay. That point, is kind of like, well, why go to the grocery store if you can just get a burger at McDonald's? Why do you have to do this or that? It's like, why are you growing a garden? Why do you have a garden? That doesn't make sense. Why are you doing a garden if you can just buy vegetables? I want to know what I'm eating. I want to feed my family healthy food. Nobody hates the Native Americans because they hunted. And somebody will be like, well, they had to hunt because that's all they had. They didn't have a grocery store to go to. I'm like, no, they were in touch with the land. They sat there and saw the stars and built these constellations out of these wild animals. And they loved these animals so much and believed that they were part of the land. That is that connection, when I get to do that. Hunters are evil, that we are hurting the animal populations. The amount of biology and science behind what we hunt, when we're allowed to hunt them, how many animals we can harvest. Right now we're coming in, turkey season starts. It's right around the corner. It's starting in the southern US already. During the spring, the females, the hens, are building their clutch of eggs. So they go out every day and they breed with a male turkey, a tom. They breed every day, and then they come back and lay another egg. And then they go back out the next day. And once they have a clutch, they have their enough eggs, then they'll lay on their eggs and they'll hatch them. In the springtime, you cannot take a female turkey. We do not shoot female turkeys because we want that habitat and those numbers to continue to grow. We want those animals to be healthy. We monitor the populations, and we have wildlife biologists, we have national biologists, state biologists, federal biologists, all these different biologists that are looking at the population levels. And every year, oftentimes, your numbers will change. This is how many deer you can take this year because we had a disease that came through from a drought and it hurt the deer population. So now we're going to reduce the number of deer you can take. That's constant. We're always looking to see how our herds are doing and how our animals are doing. And we don't want to take more than what is sustainable. And that's the thing, is that hunting and sustainability they're built in together so much. And when I was researching, the pescatarian diet and, the different issues there, it's like, I'm in agreement on how the animals that I take almost meet the definition and the goal of that diet, because the animals I'm eating are not taking up that carbon. I'm not having to farm to then produce the feed to then have them on the pasture. And I thought that was so interesting, but the animals I'm taking are wild. The populations are just unbelievable nationally of our wildlife. And it's because of conservationists and because of the conservation dollars. You may have somebody that is a wildlife photographer and they just love wildlife. But I challenge them, because what money does a wildlife photographer have to put in to conservation? They don't buy hunting licenses. They don't buy tags. So I just spent, I'm already in $1,000 this year. I am going to turkey hunt in Montana. I'm going to turkey hunt in Tennessee, Indiana, and Michigan. That's when I'm done, that'll be over $1,000 in tags, whether I take that animal or not. So I have to buy the license. And then once you have a hunting license, each species that you want to take sometimes is another tag. So then you have to pay for that too. When I buy my gun, when I buy my ammo, they are taxed at a higher bracket because that goes back to conservation and it also goes back to law enforcement. So everything that we do as hunters, we're the ones sustaining the entire population, the entire system of conservation. You know, you think about the national park system, if you don't pay an entrance fee, how are they going to keep up? You know, we only have so many tax dollars and they're clearly not going very far anymore. Mm-hmm. And so it's that kind of thing that, you know, I love wildlife so much that I'm going to buy all these licenses. I'm going to buy all these tags. Everything that I buy for hunting has a tax on it, you know, because it's going back into conservation and wildlife. And so it's just really interesting when you kind of look from the outside, not knowing much about hunting, and you say, well, you must hate animals if you can shoot them. And it's like relating that back to somebody that owns their own small farm, you know, mom and pop, and they want to be healthy and everything else. And they raise their own vegetables and they raise their own meat and they butcher it. That's a lot. It's very similar to a morally ethical hunter.
Yeah. What do you want people to know about you? Final question.
This beard is a lot of work, actually.
It's a nice beard, Evan. Very nice.
Thank you. Gosh. I think the biggest thing, and this just goes for everything right now, is that whether you agree or disagree with somebody, it's their life and it's their opinion. And if they want to choose this or that, and it's what's best for them or their family or their life or their religion or whatever, let them be. Yeah. You know, that could have been a very baited question. How do I feel about vegetarians? Because it seems like on the internet, the vegetarians that are pushing super hard are the ones that are firing off that I hate animals and I hate this and that. And it couldn't be farther from the truth. You know, and I just, whatever you want to do it for the right reasons, be a good person and stop judging everybody. Let's get the hell over that stuff.
I agree with that. Perfectly said. Evan, it was so fun to chat with you. I feel like you really educate me. And that's been one of the huge bonuses for me to do this conversation series is I really genuinely, like I said, and like I say in every episode, probably that I am a very curious person. And I try to be as non-judgmental as possible. I come from a place of wanting to learn about other people because I'm curious. And I really believe that you have a huge heart. And I don't think you hate animals. Coming from a vegetarian, almost vegetarian.
Yeah.
So now you've met
and that's great.
That doesn't think animals. So, and it felt good. It felt like a good conversation. So.
Yeah, honestly, I mean, these kinds of things can be scary on my side when a non-hunter wants to know about hunting. But it just goes back to what I said on my close there is that people are judging each other so hard right now. And we've got to get away from that. And, you know, this has been the perfect conversation. You wanted to know, and I told you, and you genuinely want to know and learn about what somebody else is doing. You don't have to go hunt tomorrow. You don't have to eat red meat. You don't have to change an ounce of yourself by educating yourself on what part of hunting is. You don't have to change 1 ounce of yourself. You can still respect me and I can still respect you and we can move on. So
100%. I want more of that too. That's a huge theme in my life right now. The world is batshit crazy and less judgment, more conversation without any combat. And that's really been my goal. And I do appreciate you. And I'm going to remember this conversation and maybe our paths will cross one of these.
I hope so. Yeah, I hope so. I'm going to have to fly out there and see what my laws are. I'll fly out and come teach you how to shoot sometime. So.
Oh, that sounds intimidating, but maybe I do trust you. I trust you. Well, I hope you enjoy the rest of your day. I'll be following you on Instagram. Our kids are the exact same ages. So I'll be keeping up with what your boys are up to. It's crazy to think, because I know you said you have a 7-year-old who's going to learn how to shoot a gun. I feel like my kids are so capable and very independent, but the thought of them with the gun makes my heart beat fast. But
Yeah.
because it's so foreign to me, you know.
Well, and I think that probably a lot of people, and I almost didn't say it because I'm thinking, okay, you know, some of these listeners might be a little concerned about that. You know, but then they also say, well, you have to be 15 or 16 to run an iPad, and you can watch a 2-year-old all of a sudden they're like, whatever you teach them, they can learn, and they're very smart and they're very capable. However, they're not perfect on their judgment, and they can make mistakes. And that is why you stand right there with them and you teach them and support them.
Right.
You know, and I pray that my sons aren't going to be the ones that are going to be on the news. They're going to be stopping the bad guy. They're not going to be the ones that are going to cause something. They're going to be the ones that want to help. And that's what I pray that I'm raising.
Yes.
You know,
I'm sure you are. I'm sure you guys are doing a great job. Well, thank you so much, Evan. And anybody who's interested in learning more can follow you on Instagram, right?
Absolutely.
Awesome.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you having me.